welcome back to another video. Just a quick update. As you can probably tell, I'm in a different location. I'm no longer based out of Central California. I'm now based out of Germany. So we moved internationally. So I'm going to be coming out with more content in the future based around Germany, obviously, and just the things I experience here. But for this video, I thought I would go through a list of my top 5 photos from 2022, at least personally, the ones that I enjoyed the most. So really the requirements for these 5 photos for me were they either needed to be compositionally strong, strong as far as a lesson that I learned from it, or just something that overall the image I felt came together so nicely that it's just one that stuck with me all year. So like I said, I'm gonna have 5 photos that I'm gonna be walking through, and I'll kind of tell you the story behind each of them. And then at the end, I wanna share with you why I think it's very, very important that as photographers, we look back on our work at the end of the year. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the photos. So this is an image that I took on the highway through Big Sur. I was out taking photos, outside of my car. We were just driving as a family down through as we usually would do on the weekends and whatnot. So I quickly heard a motorcycle approaching from behind us. So I just thought, I want to take a photo of this guy, but the best way to do that to me, since I was using my Leica, and I think it was a 50mm lens, is I zone focused on the pavement, like right here where his shadow is. I zone focused right there. And I actually just held my camera there, pointed in that direction until he passed by. I did follow him a little bit to make sure I got some motion blur. I just think it worked out really well. There's motion blur in the background. In my opinion, it is a little bit muddy in the shadows. It's a little too dark, but I did not have any idea that he was looking directly at me. So I thought that was pretty cool when I got the scan back. So that was on my Leica M2 with a TT Artisans 50mm. I believe this was on C200. So this photo I took with my Mamiya 645 with a 55mm lens on Portra 400. And I just think overall with this image, the reason why I enjoy it so much is just the color. I feel like connects everything. So really just the orange in this sky crane here, as well as these cones, also connect with the other subject in the photo. So it's kind of like these connecting pieces that kind of draws your eye through the photo. So I just think it worked out pretty compositionally well, and it's kind of one of those street photos that I wanted to make. And after I took it, I felt really good about it when I got the scan back. So I was really proud of this photo. And this was in Pacific Grove, California, just walking around near the coast there. So this next photo, while this isn't my #1 favorite photo, it is still, I believe, my strongest composition of the year. It was very hard because I had a lot to choose from, but I just chose this one because for a couple reasons. So the perspective here, so obviously my son is not larger than the tent. He is getting big, but he's not larger than our 2-person tent back here. But just the perspective that I had, the foreground has all these footprints, the midground it's kind of a mixture between, like, you can't tell, okay, is he farther back, is the tent closer up? And it just kind of adds for an interesting perspective, as well as shooting it on f/16, having everything in focus and that huge focal plane. So that way everything turned out really sharp. And I think what helped with that is just the grains and the texture in the sand, as well as the texture of the rocks here. This was taken over near Greyhound Rock in Central Coast, California. So if you go like an hour-ish north, well, I'd say about 30 minutes north of Santa Cruz. So this was taken on my Leica M2 with my 35mm, I think, with, I want to say it was C200, Fuji C200, which is, as you can see, was one of my favorite films this year. So next photo, as you can see, it's not the strongest when it comes to photographic technical value. It's completely out of focus. The exposure is actually nice in my opinion. I think it turned out really well. But the reason why this is my second favorite photo of the year is because it has a story behind it. So in Monterey, California, I was working on a personal project just on the history of the fishing in the area, just personal fishermen as well as commercial fishermen. So I talked to a lot of the different owners on the wharf, but this was Art. So this arm that you see here belongs to Art. He is the owner and operator of the abalone farm there. So abalone is what he's holding right there, and what's also in the cages there. It's a type of like snail crustacean that can be obviously eaten, but also their shells are gorgeous. And can be used for jewelry and whatnot, but it's very heavily controlled because it used to be so overfished that obviously they had to cut back on it because, you know, they were going to fish all of the abalone out of the ocean in the area. So anyway, so it was very interesting to talk to him. This was just kind of a spur of the moment thing. The reason why I think it's my second favorite photo of the year is because it taught me a very valuable lesson in the technical aspects of, you know, working on a documentary project, is that you always have to be prepared with your gear. You don't want your gear to get in the way. You don't want your gear to slow you down. And that's exactly what happened here. So I was shooting on my Leica M2 with my 35mm on HP5, which was my standard for the whole project. And the issue that I was facing is that I was out in broad daylight, obviously on the top of the wharf, and I was shooting, it was 400 speed film. So I was shooting, you know, 1/500th of a second at f8 or, you know, f11, getting good exposures and you know, good focal planes with that hyperfocal distance with the smaller aperture. But the issue was, you know, this was kind of a spur of the moment thing. There was actually a film crew from the UK, I think, filming down underneath the wharf with Art, just talking about the abalone. And usually I'm not the type of person to kind of impose myself and say like, hey, me too. But at this moment, you know, he was out there and kind of was looking in my direction as well. And I think I had already talked to him one point before, so I kind of knew of him. So, you know, I gave a couple minutes, but then I walked up to him and said, hey, you know, I'm really interested in the fishing in the area, and I'm doing a project on, you know, just doing my whole elevator pitch for my documentary project. And he was super nice, and he said, yeah, absolutely, you know, give me a couple minutes and then you can come down and you know, take some photos and ask some questions and stuff. So I went down there and I was like, man, this is going to be a very slow shutter speed and a wide open aperture, and I'm going to have to be able to focus. The lessons I learned from that is like bring an audio recorder so that way you can just record what he's saying while you're taking photos. And also have a higher speed film with you, or just develop your own film so that way you can choose to push it, you know, later if you would like to. But yeah, I just learned a lot of lessons from this photo, and I still really enjoy it. You know, I look at it as just kind of a memory of just working on that project and just kind of things to remember when I'm moving into my next project. All right, so this is my #1 favorite photo of the entire year. It's a photo of these 3 bluegrass players at Lover's Point, which is a very popular tourist part of Pacific Grove there in Central California. The reason why it's my favorite is because it kind of has a story behind it, and I kind of cheated. It has 2 photos, so you know, one of them playing and then an actual portrait of them. But the reason why it's my favorite is because it kind of culminated a lot of different things for me. You know, connecting with someone in the area on common interests. Like, they love playing bluegrass. That's one of my favorite things to listen to, is bluegrass and folk music. So I was able to actually sit there and listen to him for a while. But also just photographically, it was a great way to connect with these people and share my work with them in a certain way that I'll kind of dive into here in a second. I approached these guys and they were playing, and I just took a couple photos, and this ended up being one that actually turned out pretty good. Of them playing. And then I obviously asked for them to have a very more formal portrait. And, you know, technically speaking, like, it's not great. You know, there's a lot of busyness in the background with the, you know, cut off tree there. There's a van, you know, there's his binder down here with his music in it. So, you know, there's a lot of, like, you know, inconsistencies there. But to me, it doesn't matter, because the importance is, you know, the story behind it, which is, after I took these photos, I completely forgot all of their names. And to this day, I only remember Larry up here. I ended up wanting to find them because I had an idea. I said, I'll print these out, you know, these 2 photos, 2 of each, you know, for each of them. I'll send it to them, but I was like, I have no idea how to find these people. So they actually told me when I was there, I remembered they told me about a church that they would practice at. I actually emailed the church and said, hey, like, I'm looking for this guy by the name of Larry. I sent them the photo. And they said, oh yeah, we know those guys, you know, so just drop off the photos here and I'll connect you and, you know, email and whatnot. So we connected over email, and that's kind of how we got into, you know, talking a little bit more. And he actually ended up giving me a couple rolls of expired gold 400, which was cool. And I took some awesome photos on it. Actually, it turned out really well. But yeah, I just think, you know, #1 importance from this photo is just sharing my work and doing that for free with no expectation other than just their enjoyment and just that they will enjoy the photo. And, you know, who knows, in 50 years when, you know, some of these guys might not be around anymore, you know, their family might come across these photos and have no idea I took them, which doesn't matter. The purpose of it is just to have photos that, you know, remind them of their dad or their brother or, you know, whoever, and just what they enjoyed in their life. And that's something that I really enjoyed providing to these guys, and I think is something that for the future is what I'm gonna strive to do more this year, is to give out more of my photos and to share more of my work in that way. So there you have it. Those are my 5 favorite photos, or I should say 6 favorite photos of 2022. And at the end of this video, I just kind of wanted to share with you the purpose behind looking, at your photos at the end of the year. And, this may be obvious to other people. It was obvious to me, but the problem was I never did it. I thought about doing it. I thought about like, maybe I should have a couple hours in the afternoon in December and look back on all the photos I took this year and just kind of learn from them, compositionally as an artist, but also just be reminded of memories from the past. And, I was reminded of how important it was, and that's why I ended up sitting down to do it and making this video to share with you the importance of it, because I believe it can do 2 things. Number one, obviously it can help you improve technically, so that like that photo at the abalone farm, just learning from that mistake. In the future, I won't make that mistake again because I already made it. So looking back on that and having that hindsight of understanding things I can do different to improve. So obviously with hindsight and anything in life, it'll help you improve and be a better person, better photographer, better whoever, in the future. And then the second aspect of it is just the whole purpose of photography. Why are we photographers? We photograph, at least for me, I photograph things to remember. We photograph to remember, to freeze that exact moment in time for eternity. And that's why it's great to print out your work, to archive it, to make sure it lasts for a long time, because that's the purpose of photography, is to share these photos with other people, to, formulate a story with photography and with research behind it, and then show it to the world and say, hey, this is something I believe is important. And that's why we're all photographers. So that's why I believe it's so important to look back at the end of the year at your photos and just be reminded of things you can improve on. And, to remember people, photos of your family, of your kids, of your friends, of places you've been. You'll never be there again, possibly, but these photos will transport you there, temporarily. So that's why I think it's really important to look back on the photos. So I'd love to hear what you think about the video, and if you liked any of these photos in the video, but most importantly, I want you to leave a comment down below on what you're gonna do with your photos at the end of the year. If you think it's important to look back on your photos, if you don't think it's important, if you've already done this, and then what lessons you've learned from that. I'd be really interested to hear about what you've learned from that if you did it. So please leave that comment down below. If you do enjoy content like this from this channel specifically, and you want to see more of me and my face, go ahead and hit subscribe, and you can get updated on different videos that I'm making. I am planning on making a lot more videos this year. I'm prioritizing it a little higher because it's something I enjoy doing, as well as, go ahead and like the video if you did like the video. If you didn't like it, don't like it. It's as simple as that. But if you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button. It does help out a lot. And I will see you in the next video. So thanks for watching.